So somehow I came down this hill, which they told me afterwards nobody ever comes down here. And I found this spot, which I felt was my favorite place at Zangopari. And every day I'd come here and do a couple of hours of meditation. And later I learned that this ridge over here, this mountain range, goes all the way up over 100 miles, all the way into Bhutan. And the local people believe it has it's a snake. They see it as a snake, a cobra-headed snake, and that all this negative energy works its way all the way from Bhutan down here, and this snake head spills out this negative energy right here onto this place. So that's why he liked this place so much, because it had a lot of negative forces, and Rinpoche's speciality was this subduing negative forces. The local people gave him about 50 acres of this land on the top of this mountaintop because in this area, they believed this area was inhabited by negative spirits, and anytime they brought their cattle there, they would die. And it was a charnel ground, so it was kind of a haunted area that nobody wanted anyway. He was just barely alive, really, and we were making regular visits to Bellevue Hospital for treatment. I didn't know him at that point. Of course, I'd helped him. He'd inspired some generosity in me, but I didn't have, let's say, complete faith in him. But when he did come, he was still very ill. And again, this evoked a kind of a nascent compassion in me. And I just found myself kind of taking care of him, kind of desperately. On the weekends, though, he insisted on teaching. And we didn't make any, we didn't publicize these teachings. It was just basically a small group of about 25 old students in the Nyingma lineage, primarily students of Dudjom Rinpoche. And we would meet at actually an old loft that had been owned by William Burroughs, that John Giorno, the poet John Giorno, makes available to specifically Buddhist masters to teach there. And so Rinpoche would teach. A few weekends we arranged for him to teach. And I remember it was August 30th. In the year 2001, there were about 25 of us there, and Rinpoche had decided to teach on impermanence and the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, which are very basic, you could say, elementary teachings that, you know, most of the people in the room had been Buddhists for 30 years or more. And quite candidly, we'd gotten somewhat bored with these teachings. And Rinpoche was teaching these basic teachings, and we had a very good translator.
And so we have achieved this precious human birth.
And at one point, he stopped the teachings, he paused, and he looked at the audience and he said, "You people think that these World Trade Center towers are going to last forever. You think that you're going to die and that those towers will be standing." He said, "Mark my words, these towers will be dust." You people have no idea of the nature of impermanence.
Everybody goes straight. This ambulance is about 100 feet ahead.
And then he just segued right back into these teachings on impermanence and the truth of suffering and the Four Noble Truths. And he did it in such an odd manner that the entire audience was kind of quizzical after that. We all looked at each other like, what was that about? And of course, now we know what that was about. What was particularly poignant for me was that I learned about the incident at 9 o'clock that morning with a phone call from my daughter, who was at Stuyvesant High, hundreds of feet from Ground Zero. And she was laying on the floor of the school, talking into her cell phone, asking me why there were people jumping out of the World Trade Center, and then her phone went dead. And when I switched on the TV, there was apparently a TV crew down there, and I saw my daughter running out of the school, in this, riotous mass, with that ubiquitous cloud that we all remember, of dust coming behind her. And at that point, definitely there was a huge shift in my life. I mean, I practice, I meditate 2 hours every day, and I remember just walking away from the TV and going upstairs and sitting down and just doing my daily meditation. And with what should I say, a lot with more encouragement than I usually had. And I also remember that, after that, I basically felt it wasn't just a generosity or compassion or helping an infirmed old, very sweet Lama anymore. He's definitely right. He was definitely right. I never thought of those buildings as being dust. I maybe pictured them falling down.
The top floors collapsed down.
But that image of dust, which if you were in New York for the following months, you're well aware of that dust. That electric smell that was in the air for over a month, and the dust that was everywhere down there. Rinpoche was there on 9/11 and was, watching TV just like the rest of us. And he was just as flabbergasted and just as amazed. And they went down and spent most of the following days actually crying at the destruction and the loss of life.